Now that the dust has settled, the reception to the Destiny 2 Vex Mythoclast has been pretty poor, and I think reasonably so. I recently just got the weapon myself and gave it a try, and while it was a little better than I anticipated, yes, it was pretty bad in my opinion. I feel this weapon struggles to maintain its identity that it once had in Destiny 1 and tries to create a new identity through an alternate mode that is inherently flawed in my opinion. Not to mention that it borrows from an auto rifle archetype that is relatively unforgiving, especially when you put it on a close range weapon. And as a result, I think this weapon is truly having an identity crisis. Let's start by taking a look at some numbers and get those out of the way. The D2 Mythoclast deals 36 damage to the head and 22 damage to the body. This takes 5 crit and 1 body shots to kill in 0.83 seconds and 9 body shots to kill in 1.33 seconds, and it fires at 360 rounds per minute. Yes, this is the damage model of the high impact auto rifles. But to give this weapon some credit, it has notably high aim assist at 100 aim assist and less zoom than the high impact auto rifles at 1.5 times versus 1.6 times, which means the aim assist will have a greater effect as well, and it'll have better close range ability as a result. I believe its stats though are scaled to fusion rifles, and that would make sense because it is, under the hood, I believe, still a fusion rifle. It seems to have a built-in dynamic sway reduction style effect. The bolts initially have super high inaccuracy to the point where, like, at 20 meters shooting against a standing still target, I wasn't hitting headshots occasionally and my reticle would be on the head. But later on, after you fire for a few shots, they tighten quite a bit and the stability gets a lot better, and that makes sense with its 100 recoil direction. Now, although this DSR style effect seems to be pretty good, these first few bolts that it fires that are debatably the most important in your gunfight are very inconsistent and make it very difficult to use. I highly recommend at least using one targeting mod for this weapon, and this is a good way to segue into a side conversation here. I see a lot of people saying that the greatest effect or main effect of those helmet targeting mods is aim assist, and I think that's quite false. The accuracy boost is the main benefit of these helmet targeting mods, and if you want to see a weapon that really displays that your aim assist is only as good as your accuracy allows it to be, this is the weapon. Like I said, go to 20, maybe 25 meters and fire at a standing still target. Occasionally you won't hit headshots with this weapon, even though your reticle is on the head. And this weapon does again have that base 100 aim assist, but when you add a fusion rifle targeting mod, it gets incredibly more consistent and its ability to hit headshots at range gets a lot better. This is the accuracy in full effect. Again, your aim assist is only as good as your accuracy allows it to be. The accuracy matters so much, and your accuracy cone is very impactful, and this weapon seems to have a poor accuracy cone. And even though it has a great aim assist cone, it doesn't get to take advantage of that reliably all the time because of its poor accuracy. Okay, I swear that's the only cone rant in this video. Let's get back on topic. I don't have the catalyst myself yet, but Cool Guy did some great work on this. I'll link his video in the description so you can check it out. With the catalyst, each overcharge stack gives you significantly more stability, and it tops out with this weapon being a complete laser beam, especially in PvP where you'll get 3 stacks for overcharge per kill. The stability boost is incredibly significant, and it seems to also better pack together those initial bolts that seem to suffer from high inaccuracy or just lack of consistency to begin with, which seems to be a massive pain point for this weapon. As far as range performance, I'll have some numbers on screen here. It maintains its full damage output up until 22 meters and begins to drop off at 23, and it then loses its optimal shots to kill of 5 crit 1 body at 33 meters, becoming a 6 crit kill. It becomes a 7-shot kill at 30 meters with a 1-second time to kill, and I believe that's in 6 crit 1 body. I thought it'd be smart to do a quick comparison to the Destiny 1 Mythoclast, which also had a 5 crit 1 body optimal time to kill, and we know that to be in 0.8 seconds. That seems to be very similar, so it's either the rate of fire was ever so slightly faster, or there's some sort of variance at play here. It had a much faster body shot time to kill by 1 shot though, taking 8 body shots in 1.12 12 seconds. It also had a perk option called Aggressive Ballistics that would increase its damage in exchange for range and stability, bringing it down to a 5-shot kill and 5 crits with 0.64 seconds. Very, very fast on that. It's worth mentioning that based on footage that I can see, there was significantly more recoil on the Destiny 1 Mythoclast than Destiny 2's, especially with aggressive ballistics. And this weapon in Destiny 1, as all fusion rifles did, had projectile bullets with a travel time. They are not hit scan. This means, like weapons in Destiny 2, they, when you fire the trigger, immediately land on the target. There is no travel time. With this weapon and all fusions in Destiny 1, there was an actual travel time, so you had to slightly lead your shots. So what's the problem with the Vex Mythoclast? Or what are all of its problems and this identity crisis that I feel it has? Well, for starters, SMGs exist in Destiny 2 and they didn't in Destiny 1. These weapons have very high potential with very fast optimal time to kills, and they operate in a similar range with a more forgiving rate of fire. And I think SMGs recently have gotten a lot more competitive versatility. They're both good in 6s and 3s, and there's some great players making use of them. The two most popular, the Shayura's Wrath from Trials and the Multi-Mach from Iron Banner, have an optimal time to kill on the Multi-Mach of 0.67 seconds, and in the case of the Shayura's, roughly about 0.8 seconds, and they have a similar body time to kill of roughly 1.10 seconds. Each of them can get incredibly good perks and range upgrades that allow them to play in the same space that the Vex Mythoclast seems to want to play in. For example, the best Shayura's Wrath can maintain its optimal time to kill of roughly 0.8 seconds or so until 29 meters. And with a more subpar role that only has 2 range upgrades or maybe no access to the Adept perks, it can still do that up until 23 meters. All while having a more forgiving, faster rate of fire, better recoil or more consistent recoil, a competitive optimal time to kill, and a far better body time to kill. The Vex Mythoclast identity is a close mid-range strong weapon with some slight range potential beyond that. In Destiny 1, it maintained its uniqueness through sharing the projectile bullets of the fusion rifles, and it had things like Zen Moment to assist its erratic recoil pattern, as well as crowd control to increase its damage as a close-range crowd control weapon by 15%. While in Destiny 2, it does deviate away from that. It lost those traits in favor of an alternate fire linear fusion mode that requires kills to activate. It fails to perform favorably as a close mid-range weapon due to the existence of SMGs in Destiny 2, which do what the Mythoclast does, except better in nearly every way, within the ranges that the Mythoclast allows you to be reliably accurate. The Vex Mythoclast using the damage model of the high-impact auto rifles is quite unforgiving in close range and requires you to perform perfectly the majority of the time to see any decent results, something made far more difficult by its initial high recoil and inaccuracy, even for someone with a good shot. Unfortunately, with this damage model, landing all critical hits results in bare minimum competitiveness, and landing anything but that is incredibly punishing to its time to kill. All risk, little reward for what should be an effective close mid-range weapon. In Destiny 2, the Vex Mythoclast gains numerous significant benefits for each kill. The Catalyst makes it significantly more accurate and stable, which means it would actually take advantage of its extended range potential from maintaining better damage than SMGs would, and having the damage model of auto rifles while being overall more forgiving. This actually turns the weapon into being quite strong. It also has that optional linear fusion mode, although I thought I anticipated how forgiving this would be since this is the lowest zoom and highest aim assist linear fusion when in this mode. I still wasn't quite ready for how strong and how forgiving this mode was despite its long charge rate. While these benefits are great though, this means the Vex Mythoclast struggles to perform decently at all without a kill in its neutral state. This means you're relying on snagging quick or easy kills or cleanups on opponents, or hoping that there's simply worse players than you to get this weapon to a reasonably competitive state. Any time where you'll be playing decently skilled players utilizing better options, like SMGs or hand cannons of course, you'll notice that this weapon really struggles. And of course this is really exacerbated in Trials of Osiris, where the neutral game, all players being alive 3v3, is the most important part. Kill perks are less useful in this because once a team has the advantage, or one person dead, a 3v2 scenario, they're already far more likely to win. Given that the Vex requires a kill to become competitive and the initial kill is already so influential, this means it isn't valuable in high level 3v3 elimination, especially when the round resets and it goes back to being very subpar. And that linear fusion mode, while it might be cool and clutch, you can probably bet that it most likely won't come up or see much usage. Let's talk a bit more about its linear fusion rifle mode though. Like I said, I was pretty surprised. Even though I felt like I was pretty well anticipating of this, I was pretty surprised with how forgiving and how strong the linear fusion mode was, which is pretty cool, I gotta admit. However, that change from the normal close range identity of that fusion to its long range linear fusion precision mode feels almost jarring and kind of goes against the identity of this weapon. I could totally see how with the catalyst though it feels a lot more gradual, because with each stack of stability and it becoming a laser beam, I think you could probably use it at longer range, so it builds up to that longest range potential mode and precision mode. But because the overcharged stacks go away when you swap the weapon, building your stacks and attempting to make this weapon more competitive hinders your ability to take advantage of your loadout diversity and synergy, and often leaves your special weapon feeling like a waste. And while in its vanilla state, it's a close mid-range weapon that kind of naturally wants to be paired with a long-range weapon like a sniper to cover the most ground at least, not that you can't pair it with a shotgun, it feels like that linear fusion mode goes against pairing the weapon with a long-range counterpart, because it turns into a long-range weapon. It just feels kind of weird. I will admit though, as much as it felt weird, they can coexist a little bit more better than I thought. I've been going for some cool fun clips and it was really fun to do this by using and starting with the Vex Mythoclast, getting a few kills, switching it to linear fusion mode, getting some linear fusion kills, and then swapping to the ammo I've accumulated in my sniper and continuing to use that precision. So that felt neat, but I think that's a little bit more like montage-y and not actually practical. There's a clear similarity between the Vex Mythoclast in Destiny 2 and the Teraba SMG. And I've said in the past that I do not think that Teraba should hold its progress when you swap off of it. Whereas in this case with Vex Mythoclast, I could kind of advocate for the opposite. The reason being is, as much as they do feel similar in concept, the Vex Mythoclast building those stacks doesn't do well in execution because the base weapon behavior of the Vex Mythoclast feels awful. It feels terrible. So when you build those stacks, you're afraid to swap off of it because you need to maintain a more competitive version of the weapon and try and work to the best state of it. Whereas Teraba feels like a top tier weapon in its neutral state already that goes kind of berserk when you get the perk activated. It's got high zoom, great range, and debatably the strongest SMG archetype damage model. I've talked about how strong the linear fusion mode is, and it almost feels like the linear fusion rifle mode makes it hard for this weapon to be able to excel in its neutral state if it like got stronger, because if it was too easy to get the linear fusion mode, it would almost potentially be oppressive with how powerful it is in that state, I think. And it makes me think that maybe I would have just rather had a damage boost that just gradually ramps up, maybe resulting in the pre-nerf Mythoclast that a lot of D1 vets remember. That could be pretty cool, I think. I know I'm not talking about solutions just yet, but I want to mention that I don't think that a damage boost would be the solution, nor would it be possible on this weapon instead of the linear fusion mode. I think there's two things at play here. Firstly, they already worked on this linear fusion mode, which took a lot of time, effort, and resources, so I doubt it's going away. Secondly, I think you could make the argument that it would be too similar to Teraba at that point. Let's do a quick recap of the main problems I feel with this weapon. It's too unforgiving, inconsistent, and it lacks potential as a close mid-range option in its neutral state, and it typically performs worse than good SMGs or other close-range weapon options, especially while being an exotic. It follows the long-range, high-impact auto rifle damage model, but it lacks the range of that archetype. It left its additional helpful perks and additional options in Destiny 1, and it relies entirely on kills to feel remotely competitive or usable, rendering it relatively useless in Trials of Osiris endgame PvP. It loses its competitive usable state and progress to its best mode on weapon swap. And as a close-range weapon, typically you'd want to pair it with a long-range special like a sniper, but it discourages any loadout synergy by losing its usable state when swapping weapons, making it feel like it fails even more as a close-range weapon. Now let's talk about some of my personal proposed solutions for this. Firstly, I believe this weapon needs a damage buff. It either needs at least a more forgiving optimal time to kill, so you can take advantage of that potential a little bit more, or a faster time to kill overall. I would say my vote would be a more forgiving optimal time to kill in terms of critical hit ratio, so it's the same 0.8 roughly time to kill, but with less headshots required, and a faster base time to kill with one less shot, being more similar to Destiny 1. To pull numbers out of thin air here, an example of this would be maybe 4 crit 2 body for the optimal time to kill. 3 crit 3 body might be pushing it, but I don't know. And then in terms of your body time to kill, it would take 8 shots rather than 9, and I believe that would result in a 1.16 second base time to kill rather than the more unforgiving 1.33 it has currently. And I think as a trade-off, it should only maintain this within its optimal damage range of 22 meters. This means outside of that, it would return to what we have right now and then lose damage and its time to kill appropriately, as we saw with its range otherwise. For my next additional change, I think this weapon either needs Zen Moment added back, maybe on its catalyst, or at least a slight bit of increased stability, especially for those initial bolts. It just feels too erratic initially, but I don't want this to be completely broken in combination with my previous change of giving it a damage buff. So it would have to be very slight. Preferably, I would say just add Zen Moment to the weapon's catalyst, in my opinion. Lastly, let's talk about this weapon's overcharges and how it builds them. I think that you should be allowed to hold your charges when swapping weapons. However, because of that, and because of buffs to this weapon's neutral ability, I believe it needs to take more kills in PvP to reach its linear fusion mode. So you'll be able to utilize this weapon with something like a sniper as a close range complementing weapon that performs well in its own right. But as a result, and the trade-off here is you will have to get one more kill. Currently it takes 2 kills to get to the linear fusion mode. Instead, we'll have to take 3 kills to get there. This will make this perk more of a truly kind of show off crazy moment. Maybe you can even reduce the charge rate of it just by a bit, simply because it'll take more kills, so you can make it a little bit more powerful. Who knows? I'm not sure. I'm not totally in favor of that, just spitballing. But mainly this weapon would have this mode become more a PvE thing or a flashy kind of thing in PvP. This change would make it flawed for trials because, I mean, obviously you can only get 3 kills on a full team before wiping them, unless of course they get revived. So as much as it won't have much of a place in trials, this linear fusion mode with my proposed changes, I think this solves so many more pain points of the weapon, and that affects its performance in trials rather than just keeping it as is, as a subpar weapon that probably won't be used for a mode that's low likelihood to be used in trials to begin with. It can stay very good in PvE, and I think it needs some buffs in that regard too, but anyways, it can stay great in PvE and come up a lot in PvE, sometimes in regular 6s in PvP as an oh wow kind of moment, and then in trials, the main focus of this weapon will be its neutral ability and building the stability stacks with its catalyst. So that is everything that I have to say on my thoughts on the Vex Mythoclast. I'm actually pretty proud of this discussion and I'm pretty passionate about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought of my ideas. Let me know what you think of the weapon currently, problems you have with the weapon currently, and things that you think would make it better for the future, but still be a balanced option as an exotic. Thanks for watching. Check out my Twitch if you haven't. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.